This presentation is going to go over Viktor Lowenfeld, who is a major figure in art education. He is a huge part of our understanding of the childhood artistic developmental process, where we consider the whole child, including the mind and the body. In his life, he was born in Austria, Vienna, Austria, where he actually, in 1922, studied at the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. He worked as a teacher and art educator, also a math teacher kind of through these years from the 20s into the 30s. In 1939, he did have to immigrate to the United States due to the rise of Nazi Germany, where he eventually became a professor at Penn State University and focused mainly on art education. His early years in the 20s, he did teach art education in more of a traditional way. So students that have talked about kind of the teaching that they got from him, it was kind of that, more technical based. He learned proportion, perspective. He taught these things to the students. So it was a little bit more traditional and not completely coinciding with his later theories in child development. This time in his life for teaching wasn't really discussed too much. He didn't document too much of it or reflect on it. And some people believe that this could be due to the fact that he had his own personal issues going on with the war and having to leave because of the Nazis. We even have one student that recounted that he was with him the day that he received the letter that he had family that passed away due to the Holocaust, and he turned ghostly white. So there is some talk about the fact that he didn't really document this, maybe even this change in his style of teaching and kind of considering the mind and the body and not just the technical aspects of teaching could have related to this when he did have to flee. Another big part of his life was the fact that he spent a lot of time working with blind students. There was one case where he worked with a student named Camilla, who was actually blind and deaf. She had not really had much training at all, kind of even in communication, and he was able to kind of connect with her, help her create and process through the use of clay, eventually being able to express different emotions, different objects, and even helping her learn how to, as she segued through this, kind of learning how to read Braille, and kind of helping her through this as well. So this was another big part of where a lot of his research came from, was working with blind students and seeing how they could work with sensory issues that they might have and how all the senses are connected. He had a couple books that, we had a few books, but a couple ones that are more well known would be Creative and Mental Growth. If you know a book by him, it's probably going to be this book. This talks about his whole philosophy of education. The Nature of Creative Activity was also another big one. This was kind of a little bit more of the research part of this. He did have different editions of Creative and Mental Growth that he did add to, but these two kind of tied together a little bit there. So if you were to read Creative and Mental Growth here, we would have the stages of artistic development. So we have everything from stage 1 to stage 6, where you start with scribbling, getting the motor skills, getting pen to paper, pencil to paper, just kind of learning how to refine that a little bit. Moving into, faces, but maybe limbs coming off of the face, and then moving towards more realistic drawing and even getting into technical, learning proportions and perspective and things like that through those stages and those years of development. So he did spend his life working to understand the psychology of art and development and kind of giving educators these theories that you can put in use to say, okay, where is this student at artistically or developmentally in their artistic skills? He had to overcome his own adversities, even becoming a refugee himself and leaving the country and having to kind of work through that on his own. He gave educators this clear path as markers, and he helped blind individuals help to create their own works of art and even help kind of, create part of his own philosophy through these works that he did with them. So he did leave the community of art educators